Where does Gable Stephens rank on the longest active winning streaks right now? Let's stop stalling and start talking wrestling. What's going on, wrestling fans? My name is Josiah, and welcome to Fanco Wrestling, your source for wrestling news and discussion. And this week, we're talking about the 5 longest active winning streaks in the NCAA. So these are guys who haven't lost in quite some time, whether 10 matches, 20 matches, 30 to 40 plus matches. And there are a couple of guys who do fit those categories in this top 5. So let's get into the first guy. And the first guy here is OConnor. So Austin O'Connor of UNC, the 149-pounder, is on a 27-match winning streak right now. His last loss was to Pat Lugo of Iowa, who he lost to at Midlands on December 30th, 2019. So he was entering the NCAA tournament with only that loss. And from last season, of course, we know that NCAA championships were canceled. But this season, he went completely undefeated, won the national championship, and there's been some discussion and some debate about how tough Austin O'Connor's schedule is, just because of the guys he's facing in the ACC, which is kind of crazy because the ACC is one of the toughest conferences in my opinion, but it just doesn't seem to be as strong at 149 for whatever reason, or maybe it's just because Austin O'Connor is just so much ahead of the pack. Now, interestingly enough, let's say he does stay at 149 for the upcoming season, he will have some tough competition with Tariq Wilson definitely moving up to 149. But it is rumored that Austin O'Connor could bump up to 157 pounds right now. So we'll see what happens there. And if he does stay at 149 with Tariq and Bryce Andonian, I mean, the ACC could continue to get even tougher, but Austin O'Connor will continue to push the pace. And we saw that with his win over Sammy Sasso. And that's where I think things kind of fall flat with, saying his schedule's not as tough, is when he gets to the big stage, he shows up. He shows up when he gets to the big stage. At number 4, David Carr of Iowa State is on a 33-match winning streak right now. His last loss was actually to Ryan Deacon at the Cliff Keen on December 7th of 2019. Now, unfortunately, he did not face him, unfortunately for wrestling fans at least, that is, he did not face him at this year's NCAA championships because he did face Hayden Hidlay. He faced him in the semifinals, but Ryan Deacon ended up losing earlier in the NCAA championship, so we didn't get to see the David Carr versus Ryan Deacon rematch that we all so desperately wanted to see. Now, David Carr actually added 20 straight wins to his 33-match winning streak this season. He had 13 in a row last season after his last loss, and then he won 20 in a row this season, extending his total win streak to 33. Now, I mean, David Carr's career has been so impressive at this point, but especially in his winning streak, I mean, it is one of the most impressive in this top 5, with wins over Wyatt Sheets, who's an All-American of Oklahoma State, Brayton Lee of Minnesota, an All-American, Hayden Hidlay, and Jesse De La Vecchia. And then I also want to mention, even though this is before his current win streak started, he does have a win over Caleb Young. He got that win before his win streak actually started, but it's a notable win that I do have to point out. Now, Gable Stephens, the guy I prefaced at the beginning of this video, is on a 34-match win streak, so just one over David Carr, Gable Stephens of Minnesota. Now, there's a lot of questions to be asked about Gable Stephens. One, about whether he's going to be returning for this upcoming season. Of course, we know that Gable is on the Olympic team. Maybe he wins an Olympic medal and decides to retire from collegiate wrestling, or maybe he decides that he wants to come back. Gable has thrown all these rumors around, and nobody really knows exactly what's going to happen with Gable's career, except for Gable, of course, and only time will tell. But let's look at his winning streaks. So he has a 72-2 career record, and the impressive thing about Gable is he only has 2 losses in his career, but both of them are to the same guy, Anthony Cassar. His last loss, which came to Anthony Cassar at the NCAA championships back on March 22nd in 2019. He also lost him at the Big Ten championships, but that's his only loss, and nobody's even come close to him since that time. Gable's just turned it up another level, and he did win the Hodge Trophy this year, of course. In the past 25 matches, the past 25 of the past 34 matches, he won by bonus point. So out of his last 34 matches winning streak, he's won 25 of those by bonus point victory, which is so darn impressive. Now, before we get to the number 2 on this list, which you may be surprised at who is number 2. I did want to mention that Minnesota is actually one of the only teams that have 2 wrestlers in the top 15 winning streaks in the NCAA. One of them is Gable, of course. The other is Pat McKee. And you can see the entire top 11 on FancoWrestling.com. You can check that out down in the description below after I finish these top 2. Because the number 2 is Spencer Lee. Now, why I said you may be surprised that Spencer Lee is at number 2 with 35 matches, so darn close. David Carr at 33, Gable Stephens at 34, and then Spencer Lee at 35. Why you might be surprised is Spencer Lee just is so darn consistent, and you may be wondering, like, how is he not number 1? How is Spencer Lee not number 1? And there are a couple reasons for that. So, one, Spencer actually really just got to number 2 just by being consistent. Consistency for Spencer has just been total key for him, because coming into this season, he was actually like number 5 on the list heading into 2021 season. Pat Glory was on the list with 24 straight wins. Griffith had 28 straight wins, and he continued that into this season until he lost at the Pac-12s to Anthony Valencia. Noah Adams, who was crushing his winning streak until, of course, his losses this year. And then Brock Mahler this season even passed him. Brock Mahler of Mizzou even passed him with 33 straight wins until the NCAA championships. And the NCAA championships are, of course, just killer because only 10 guys can come out as champions. And only 10 guys, if all of them were undefeated, could come out undefeated. And that didn't happen this year. So Spencer last year took the time to compete at the Senior National. So that took a little bit of time out of his schedule. He's been a little bit injured at times, taking off a couple of dual meets or tournaments here and there, even pulling out of Midlands a couple of years ago. So that's kind of why he doesn't have these crazy massive wins. And of course, winning streaks, I should say. But the thing is, it was also a condensed season. So in a normal season, Spencer may have pulled off like 40, or maybe 40 is too much, 20 to 30 wins. But it didn't happen this year. Now, if you're wondering who Spencer last lost to, is to Sebastian Rivera of Northwestern at the time. Now, of course, he's at Rutgers. But this was at Big Ten's back in March of 2019. So he hasn't lost since that time. And, of course, he's going to be looking for his 3rd straight undefeated season. So who's number 1? I know you're wondering who's number 1. Yanni D. Yanni Giacomohalis didn't even wrestle this season. Yanni of Cornell. Of course, Cornell was not able to wrestle this season due to the Ivy League procedures and not allowing their team to wrestle. But Yanni's current win streak is 47 straight matches. 47. Now, he hasn't wrestled in the past couple of years due to the fact of not wrestling this season, as well as his Olympic redshirt year, but he still holds the number 1 longest win streak in the NCAA, which is actually pretty darn crazy. His last and only career loss. So I mentioned that Gable Stephens has 2 losses, but both to the same guy. Yanni has only 1 career loss, and it's to one guy, and he's still in college. And maybe they face off next year. Maybe they don't, depending on the weight that each of these guys go. But Jaden Ironman of Mizzou, back in 2017, December 30th, 2017, Mizzou and Cornell wrestled, and Jaden Ironman actually defeated Yanni. But since that time, Yanni's actually defeated Jaden Ironman 3 times. And, of course, he's won 2 NCAA championship trophies, which was absolutely huge. Now, he also, I think the other thing, I mentioned that these top 5 guys, each of them have something impressive about them. David Carr beating a bunch of All-Americans. Spencer Lee, of course, winning the Hodge, as well as Gable. And then Yanni, he's beaten multiple national champions in Nick Lee and Dean Heil and just plenty and plenty of All-Americans. But where will he be returning next season? And could he even bump up a weight to 149? Or will he stay at 149? And could he start to rival even bigger winning streaks, such as Zane Rutherford's? If you're interested in seeing the longest active winning streaks, the 11 longest active winning streaks, you can head on over to FancoWrestling.com, and you'll be able to check out all 11. You see Pat McKee, who I mentioned, is in the top 11 with 6 straight wins. And Nick Suriano here. Just wanted to give you a little tease before you head over to FancoWrestling.com. But these winning streaks are so darn impressive, and I hope to see even more continue on in the 2022 season. The season cannot start soon enough, and I cannot wait to see some wrestling.